Hello, everyone, and welcome to Moon to Sun. We're going to be discussing the astrology of the week from June 17th to the 23rd. Thomas and I decided to give a little bit of a break this week, so I'm going to be doing this week's episode solo. And let's go ahead and dive right in. So, starting off on Monday the 17th, we have both Venus and Mercury who just moved into Cancer. They're going to be meeting up at that 0 degree point, and they're just coming out of squares with Neptune as they moved out of Gemini the evening before. So, Sunday night, they both made squares to Neptune in Pisces at 29 degrees. And as they move into Cancer on Monday, I consider this kind of the unofficial start to Cancer season, even though we still have the sun hanging out in Gemini for a couple more days. But the general theme I like to think of any Cancer season is connecting our feelings with our needs. And that's because Cancer is associated with emotions and feelings, and the moon is often associated with um, our very practical needs of our bodies, the food that we eat, the people that we see on a day to day basis, our families, our homes, the things that bring us comfort and stability. So, over the coming weeks and starting this week, definitely, regular reflecting and checking in with yourself will be really important for maintaining a stable sense of well being throughout this Cancer season. Our needs tend to vary from moment to moment, and that's much like the moon. And our feelings are the indicator you can think of telling us where those needs are maybe not being met or could be met better. And because Mercury is sometimes associated with short travel and cars and mechanical things, I think it's helpful to think of your emotions as kind of a sensor mechanism, helping you to kind of tune into whatever it is that you need to give your attention to keep you functioning at your best, sort of like how your check engine light might come on in your car. But hopefully, you never even have to see the scary light come on because you've been taking your car in for regular oil changes and just generally being proactive in its overall maintenance, which you should be doing also for your body, hopefully. Um, so it's that level of care and attentiveness that I'm thinking that we should all be striving for this week and, of course, throughout Cancer season. And Mercury and Venus are going to be giving us a lot of support for this kind of self love and using your feelings as important data points. Mercury loves data. So these feelings and emotions that are coming up for us right now are those data points that are going to help point us to where we need to be taking care of ourselves better. So these energies with Venus and Mercury giving us a taste of the early degrees of Cancer is going to kind of transition nicely into the next big transit of the week, which is the Sun making that same square in Gemini to Neptune in Pisces at 29 degrees, right before it moves into Cancer to mark the summer solstice. And this aspect, which, like I said, Venus and Mercury had already done over the weekend, is kind of that final piece of preparation. I think that we'll all need navigating the deep watery Cancer season that's coming up for us, especially with Neptune and Pisces at that final degree, is really representing a kind of space in our unconscious that we access maybe like right before we wake up from a really deep REM cycle, where our minds want to make sense of that other world we were just in moments ago, but that information is like abstract and fragmented, and we wake up and it can be very jarring and disorienting, and it's that undercurrent of kind of confusion and bewilderment that might set the tone for Thursday in particular, but also in the days leading up to it from, again, those aspects that Venus and Mercury also made to Neptune earlier in the week. And Cancer is really kind of like the realm of the feels. So it may not feel exactly comfortable at first, shifting from like Gemini mental energy into the well of feelings in Cancer. But these transits, I think, are helping to prime us to trust and follow these feelings rather than trying to grasp at our conscious logical minds, like a flotation device. It'll be much easier to kind of ease into it and let yourself kind of calmly sink into those murky waters and just let yourself be immersed, because applying rational thinking right now will probably show up as struggle and frustration. So if you're trying to bring it all back into your head, you know, that may not be the best way. Try to relax and just let yourself feel whatever emotions are coming through for you. And let the thoughts that may arise as a result come naturally. And this kind of surrendering to our feelings and emotions will be kind of our useful guides over the next few weeks. And if we do that, I think that we'll have a lot of powerful support from both Neptune and Saturn and Pisces to heal what needs tending to and to dream deeply about what's possible for ourselves and also for the collective. So now that we have the Sun, Mercury, and Venus all in Cancer, and coming off of those difficult squares with Saturn and then Neptune, throughout Cancer season, they're going to be slowly making their ways into very harmonious aspects with both of those planets because it's fellow water signs. So they're going to be moving into trines. And I think Saturn kind of gets a bad rap sometimes. He's kind of considered to be, well, he's called a malefic. It's kind of the technical term. But I really think it's important to reframe that mindset for Saturn because he's not the enemy. And no one, really wants to hear the words no or slow down and be careful, especially when you're having a good time. But sometimes that is exactly what we need. And the moments that we're in may feel fun and nice and happy. And so that that's why we don't want to hear slow down and no or whatever. But, moments are moments, they pass quickly. And, once they do, there's a space that opens up between that moment that's now past and the present. And that space in between is what we call time. And that is Saturn's ruler. That's what he rules over. Um, and it's in that space that we have an opportunity to really reflect and think back about our choices from a place of distance and hopefully maturity. And that reflection is also kind of ties in nicely with themes that the moon represents. And because this is the moon season, the moon rules Cancer, these themes will come up for us. And so it's in these reflections, I think that we have an opportunity. Saturn gives us a chance to see how we've grown and maybe how our desires might have shifted a little bit in that time and how we might have to kind of shift or move directions because of those changes that we now have experienced. So really the gift of Saturn is that that space, that time that he allows us because I mean, imagine if every fleeting fantasy that we ever had came true immediately, we'd all be in a lot of trouble. So thank God we have Saturn to give us that time and space that we need to really think about what we want and to think about if that is still what we want after some time has passed. And really, right now, because of Saturn being in Pisces, which is a very dreamy place, there's a very thin veil right now between our dreams and the reality of waking life. And while Saturn is in Pisces, and especially as he stations to turn retrograde later this month, I think he really wants us to tread carefully and really take our dreams seriously because we may think that they're only dreams, but our dreams are really the raw materials that create our reality. So, in other words, what you dream has real potential to become real right now. So, be careful what you wish for, is the message. And that takes us into Friday. And this is a beautiful full moon in Capricorn we have coming up in the evening on Friday. And this is special because one, it's a full moon, but also because it's a blue moon. There's going to be another full moon in Capricorn at the very end of Cancer season. So Saturn, being the ruler of Capricorn, again, plays a very central role in the overall tone and message of this season. These full moons are, I think, asking us to reflect on our dreams and really hone in on which ones we want to make into reality. With Saturn as the ruler, these full moons remind us that when we are patient and we let time be our friend, um, we can use that as an opportunity to go back and make revisions as needed. So this is kind of a rare opportunity to really use that time to reflect deeply on what you want, what you need to create in your world. And if you need to go back to the drawing board, you have that opportunity. The cosmos are giving you this opportunity to go back and make changes if you need to. And if you go back and you decide still at the end of Cancer season that all the things that you wanted at the beginning are still true, even better. So now you know for sure. And because the moon is the host of the season, being the ruler of Cancer, the moon, as you know, moves in and out of signs every couple of days. So this can feel a little bit like an emotional roller coaster for some people, but I think that it doesn't have to be. I think that if we heed the advice that's coming from um, her and the relationship with Saturn, they're both emphasizing the importance of self regulation, which is going to provide kind of a stable um, place for us as we go through these fluctuations. So I won't go into detail on the moon transit specifically and aspects because we'd be here all day. But if you tune into the Fun Astrology podcast, I know Thomas is always on top of the moon, and every morning he'll give you the rundown of what she's going to be up to. And I think it'd be really helpful if you are able to find out where the moon is going to be moving through your own personal natal chart throughout this season, and really keeping an eye on that and journaling, of course. I always encourage people to journal, especially if you're following astrology, because it really does um, offer a lot of really important insights. It has for me, for sure. Um, so also an important part of this Cancer season is that while Mars is in Taurus, an Earth sign, a Venus ruled Earth sign, he's going to be making kind of a supportive sextile, we call it a supportive aspect to these planets moving through Cancer. And specifically, he's going to be making a sextile to Mercury earlier in the evening, that same day as the first Capricorn full moon on Friday. I think of Mars as like our inner engine or fuel tank. And when Mars is giving us support from a Venus ruled, earthy sign like Taurus, that also happens to be the exaltation of the moon, I kind of think of him as like the lovable, triumphant underdog of the season, which he probably would hate to hear, but that's probably not how he wants to see himself. But I think it's going to be the right combination of energies that we need to feel supported. And again, we try to maintain our own self regulation. And Mars and Taurus is there, I think, as a helpful reminder that preventative care is a form of self care. And when I use the term self regulation, it really encompasses a lot of different practical elements. It refers to grounding methods like breathing exercises or intentional movement like yoga or dance. It also just means letting your mind and your body rest when you feel tired, and also remembering to nourish yourself. Don't wait until the point where you start to feel weak and cranky. That's your check engine light. So we want to be proactive now and carry some healthy snacks around with you or something, so we don't even have to get to that point. And also really do not hesitate. Don't even entertain the thought of hesitating to reach out to a friend or a loved one if you feel like you need support or you just want some good company. To lift your mood. These are all things that we can do to self-regulate. And I think of Mars and Taurus kind of like the strong arm, there in your mind, reminding you not to put off lunch another hour, and to take those clothes out of the dryer the night before so they aren't wrinkled in the morning, save yourself the trouble. Or, not to fall asleep in front of the TV, turn it off and open a book before bedtime so that you get that better quality sleep, and it will carry over into the next day, and you'll have more physical and mental energy so that you can be functioning at your best. So I think all of these things are ways that we can, work to help support ourselves and ride the emotional tides of Cancer season with more ease and stability, which makes the moon very happy. And moon also is sometimes associated with the physical human body. And finally, on Saturday, we have Mercury in Cancer kicking off a series of squares with the North Node in Aries at 12 degrees, which will be followed by Venus and then the Sun. And I see this as kind of a checkpoint transit. And it's important, I think, looking at this specific aspect, to remember that Pluto is still in Aquarius and he's moving backwards into Capricorn again, which he's been doing for the last year and a half and will do again this year before he moves into Aquarius for good. And these are two Saturn ruled signs. And again, Saturn is coming up in all different kinds of ways this season. And because Pluto is an outer planet, he moves very slowly. It's important not to lose sight of the bigger story here, which he's representing. And the movement of the nodes is kind of like a chapter in the story, guiding our chariots. And right now we're still being directed to, through Aries, where the North Node is. So with Mercury in Cancer, I think of this as telling us a little bit about how our feelings inform our thoughts, and how our thoughts can create strong emotions in us. So it's good, again, to be mindful of those emotions that you give your attention to. And as they arise, be curious and ask where they might be coming from, and what need is or is not being met that may have caused them to show up for you. And this kind of questioning, the connection between our thoughts and our emotions and how we conduct ourselves as a result of that connection is something I think that we're all being called to do this Cancer season. And I think that this aspect is definitely underlining that for us. All right. And finally, this brings us to our tarot card of the week. And this week I have selected the Three of Wands. And the reason I pulled this card is because this is a card to me that represents the space where potential meets possibility. And, the Greeks have a word for this, kairos. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but it roughly translates, I think, to the right time, which is kind of like serendipity. But I think more than anything, it's about how when we remove certain expectations, we open ourselves up to all kinds of possibilities and potentials. So that when you let go of certain ideas of how things should look or how you think that they might look when they show up for you, if you just distance yourself from those images and those kind of prejudices in your mind, you'd be surprised what comes flooding in. It may not look like what you thought it would look like, but if you're open, you might be surprised by what comes through for you right now. And I have a little bit of a story to tell that I think plays nicely, or at least I think is kind of representative of the energy of this card for me, at least. And this is goes a few years ago. I was having a kind of a rough time. I had just kind of had a couple heartbreaks in a row, and my best friend and I were not on speaking terms. So I was feeling pretty blue, and I was taking a long walk on the beach as I do when I'm trying to clear my head and work through something. And I was probably particularly broody that day, and I was wearing this shirt. And as I was walking, I had my headphones in. I was listening to Joy Division. I was like totally tuned out of the world in my own head. A guy stepped in front of me and kind of like got in my path, so I couldn't pretend like I didn't see him. I took my earbuds out. I was like, "What do you want?" And he asked me if I had a light, which I don't smoke, so I said no. I just kept walking. I don't think I even made eye contact with him. And as I was walking down the beach, I kind of thought to myself, like, "Ugh, that's kind of rude." But I'm not in a good mood, and I really just didn't have the energy to have a conversation. I also kind of felt like he's probably trying to pick me up. And I don't want anything to do with that. Not in the mood. But anyway, a few months later, I decided to put myself out there. I got on a dating app, and I swiped right on a guy, and we ended up going out for a date. And I had no idea, but he did. When we met up that evening, he recognized me, or he knew, I guess, maybe from the app that I was the same girl on the beach that had completely rejected him. And I didn't recognize him. I said, "I'm so sorry. Like I felt like I was kind of rude to you." And but we had a great time, and in fact, we ended up doing a whole lot of fun things together. We traveled. We had a bunch of adventures, and to this day, he's still one of my favorite people in the world. Um, and so it's just one of those things where thank God the universe gave me a second chance, right, to meet this person and really get to know them. Because if I just had that one-off interaction with them, I would never have known what a wonderful person he is. And so it's just about like keep your mind open, and it may not look like what you think it'll look like, but it may still be a good time. All right, so that's all I have for you this week. So take care of yourself, and if you like this episode, please like and subscribe. And if you haven't already, please give us any feedback that you have. Just be gentle. I'm an Aries rising, so I'm very fragile. All right, take care.